There are 1, 2, 3 media availabilities scheduled for week 2 of Ohio State training camp, and we are barreling into the second on a Three Thoughts Thursday. Does that work perfectly? It sure doesn't, but welcome to The Beat, presented by the Waterworks. He's Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. We've got Matt Patricia. We've got James Smith. We've got Quay Rousseau, and we've got John Walker. I think it's going to be another nice day at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center.
It should be. I always enjoy the opportunity to talk to guys who transferred in because they help shed a light on what Ohio State does well. And I think for a fan base, sometimes the
Transfer Thursday.
Transfer Thursday. It's Transfer Thursday.
Shoot.
I think sometimes like the fan base at large doesn't always get an opportunity to appreciate how truly unique Ohio State is. And so when we get to hear new voices, and, you know, we talked to James in the spring, we talked to Quay temporarily. John did not speak in the spring, I don't think, did he?
I believe he was available, yeah.
Well, regardless, it
wasn't an extensive interview.
When you get an opportunity to see how things have changed for these guys from 6 months ago to now, how much different they feel, how much more comfortable they feel. Do they still feel like Ohio State is doing things at a level that is different than, you know, people maybe would assume or know? It's always good to get their perspective.
I asked James Smith about that briefly last week after, I don't know, either the first or second practice of training camp. It's like he got here and everyone was raving about his winter workouts, but he didn't transform his body in January and February. And he had really good practices in March and April and people were excited. And then whatever he did in the last 3 months is just almost frightening.
He looks like a rectangle. I don't really ever understand it.
I don't want to start talking about superheroes again on the beat, but he looks like the Hulk. And I
would have said more like the Thing.
Okay,
you know.
All right. Well, I did this to myself. I shouldn't.
Yeah, I am also a Marvel guy. I saw comments on Wednesday's show that I'm a DC guy. Incorrect.
The point is,
I just like Batman.
We have seen this thing play out numerous times with transfers coming in and then elevating their performance when you get surrounded by the circle of care in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. It's not just the weight room, but it is also, and it's also not just the coaching staff, but nutrition and everything else. It's all inclusive, and these guys take another step forward. And, you know, for James Smith, I think, and Quay Rousseau both, when they were looking at their options and leaving Alabama, this was something that they wanted. They clearly are not opposed to being pushed and challenged.
Yeah.
Or they wouldn't have gone to Alabama in the first place. But, you know, there does seem to be discussion about, well, maybe that's not happening to the level that the Crimson Tide used to be known for under Nick Saban. And Ryan Day is saying, and Larry Johnson is saying, I'll have one of those. Bring them over here. And if you've got two, even better.
And I'm sure James will get asked a lot about his father, who grew up an Ohio State fan, and the comments he made on the fan last weekend about his dad wearing Ohio State stuff to Alabama games. But all of that stuff aside, like it's nitty gritty here. How has camp been? How is it like when you are actually going full speed ahead at Carson Hinsman and Luke Montgomery? What are those battles like? I think people will be interested to hear that because John Walker and Quay Rousseau and James Smith are all in the trenches. They're all lined up. There's no linebacker play for Quay Rousseau. There's no, I mean, it's like you guys are just going head to head all the time. And so I'm interested to hear from their perspective how different going against this offensive line now is versus in the spring, now that stuff is ramped up, now that you've got your full speed ahead running backs, now that you've got everything else. So it should be a good day.
And it does seem pretty straightforward in terms of position work for James Smith and John Walker. And as you said, with Quay Rousseau, he has versatility to potentially play elsewhere, but it doesn't seem like that's happening at Ohio State, at least not to this point. There's a lot of camp left, and Matt Patricia can do any number of things with his personnel and different fronts and moving him around. But are you getting the impression based on what we saw from the first 3 days and maybe what we'll hear from Quay Rousseau on Thursday, like sort of like the next guy behind Kenyatta Jackson at this point, that seems to be the role that they're penciling and circling for him.
Yeah, that's what it looked like last weekend in the 3 practices we got to see. I'm interested to hear from Matt Patricia's perspective. Like, if Quay Rousseau is a defensive end, he's not working in the linebacker room at all. However, there's going to be times when he lines up at end and doesn't have his hand in the ground. There's going to be times when Christian Allegro does. Not apropos of nothing, I do wish we were speaking to Christian Allegro on Thursday as well.
That would be four transfers. That's not alliterative.
Yeah, so I guess it makes sense. Thank you, Ohio State, for helping us there. I'm interested, how much does that change a guy's role when he has the ability to do those things? It's not, if you get LDKJ, if you put Kenyatta Jackson on a lie detector, he's going to say, hey, I can just stand up and edge rush as a stand-up rusher too, but it's not really what everyone's cut out for.
I don't think Kenyatta Jackson has an issue telling the truth or speaking his mind.
Right. I mean, his opinion is certainly that he can do that. Now, Quay-Rasaw at 6'2.5", 245, 250 pounds is much more of a Caden Curry body type than a Kenyatta Jackson body type. So how does that play into things when Ohio State's trying to figure out someone's role? Does it matter if you're a starter at Ohio State? Because you transferred from Alabama, you have high expectations for yourself. You come in, you're Quay-Rasaw, and you're one of the transfers. People are like, I don't know exactly how this guy fits. Does it matter if you're a transfer? These are things that I would be interested to hear about.
Well, he also arrives with a lot of expectations, and that's not dissimilar to Bo Atkinson a year ago. And it is not a like for like comparison. Obviously, I don't want to make it that way, but all of these three guys are in a different position than Bo a year ago. So if you're projecting that forward, we have a full spring to evaluate. You had mat drills, you had winter workouts, you had OTAs, you had everything for them. That puts them in a better position to go immediately into the lineup.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many reps that means for each of them. I think for James Smith and John Walker, it's probably going to be a larger share than what Quay-Rasaw is in line for, at least at this exact moment. But I don't know. It's a week into camp. There are 3 more weeks of it before they play a game. And we've seen Matt Patricia adjust accordingly as the season goes along based on what somebody is showing they can do well, a particular package for a specific opponent or whatever. That's probably where Quay-Rasaw's versatility helps him the most.
Do you think LDMP would acknowledge that this year's team is significantly deeper than last year's, or will he?
I think he already has, yeah.
I mean, those are things that people are going to ask, right? Like, is this different? Why y'all back? People are going to wonder, like, how does this team, who lost 8 defensive starters 2 years ago, after having the number 1 defense in the country, go out, be the number 1 defense in the country, have to replace 8 starters again? For a guy heading into year 2 in the program, how concerning is that for Matt Patricia that he has to maintain that level? Or is it just something you're like, hey, we have more parts, so we'll figure it out?
I think Matt Patricia is a really smart guy, and he's also a realist based on our experiences with experiences covering him over the last year. He wasn't making excuses last year about having to replace that many starters. Now, it did help probably to get 6 or 7 months into the process and see, well, I have Caleb Downs and I have Sonny Styles and Caden McDonald's going to do all this stuff in the middle. That's an easier way to sleep at night. But this year, I think, is different for Matt Patricia in that by the time he arrived last year, most of that grocery shopping was done.
Yeah.
This group that he's inherited and the pieces that he's going to be using this year, first and foremost, either have a year in his system, if you're talking about Jalen McClain, Peyton Pearson, Kenyatta Jackson, Edric Houston, and I think we're almost at the point where you can include him in that starting mix, at least based on experience, even if it wasn't as extensive as Tywone Malone or alongside K-Mac the way that he envisioned. But, give him credit for 4 or not, doesn't much matter. The other pieces then...
Jermaine Matthews.
Yeah, Jermaine, of course. Sorry. Matt Patricia will have... And Devin Sanchez too, all right? So that group.
Yeah.
I think I'm tapped out at that point. But the rest of the pieces that you're fitting in around it, Matt Patricia was directly involved in bringing them in, developing and teaching them over the last 8 months. So I wonder if we're going to LDMP this, is this year easier for you? And because there's so much discussion about, well, it's going to be way harder to do this the second time in a row. Maybe it's not.
Yeah, I think that's the question. Like, how do you determine when you're replacing Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, Caden McDonald, Arvell Reese, you're replacing them with a lot more guys, but they're obviously not going to be the same high level, or you don't expect them to be that level.
Yeah.
But in general, is it easier to plan with this group because you can do so many different things?
Well, I think ultimately that's what it's going to come down to. I don't think that Matt Patricia would hide or deny the fact that there are not currently 3 first-round draft picks and a bonus first-round draft pick, like for the 2027 NFL draft on this defense. The highest individual ceiling is still going to be the 2025 group that he coached. That's what's different about this one, and you're alluding to there. Is this deeper? Probably so. And I've been putting it in that terminology of game ready. I think Ohio State and Matt Patricia, and then by extension Larry Johnson, Tim Walton, Matt Guerrero, James Laurinaitis, I think they all feel like they have more pieces to play with. For a coach, that's exciting.
Yeah.
You would love to have...
For a fan, it's uncertainty.
You'd love to have depth of first-round draft picks and like first-round draft picks behind them.
Yeah.
But that's not really a scenario that anyone's going to ever have in college football again.
No, that's a question, like, now that I'm sitting here thinking about what would I want to ask Matt? Like, as a guy who spent 25 years in the NFL and front offices and all that, how many of these guys do you see as first round pick? Like, who would you, as an NFL exec, be like, that's the guy out of this group? Because it does seem to be a really solid group, but I don't know as far as I'm on record. I said I think Jalen McClain will be a first round pick. Maybe I'm wrong. I want to know his opinion as someone who watched this. Like, if he was one of those NFL scouts who was on campus Thursday, Friday, Saturday last week, who do you walk out of there going, okay, we got one? And again, a lot of these coaches aren't ever going to really fully divulge what they're thinking because they don't want to risk upsetting someone else's ego or whatever. But I'm interested to see, like,
it's not even for the players' benefit anymore as much as it is for the families and third uncles
and agents and stuff like that. I just think that it's an interesting way to couch it. Like, you've seen this. Like, who are the guys that you walk out of that building on Saturday afternoon and you call your other NFL scout buddies and be like, hey, buddy, you have to go see this?
There were a lot of people leaving on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday that said, you got to see Birm.
Oh, why?
Because physically you look different.
I look different. I feel different. I eat different. I sleep different. I move different. Silky smooth. I'm like a dolphin. And I got there because of Awaken 180. Yeah, that's right. I'm a smooth-skinned dolphin boy. I'm not a little French girl like Julian's saying, apparently, but I can eat French.
Carson Hinsman's words, not ours.
I can eat French bread. I can eat anything I want because I've learned how to control my appetite. I've learned how to control the way I think about food thanks to Awaken 180. If you go to awaken180weightloss.com, you can start your own health journey. They have an app that works with you. They have coaching that is with you for life. Awaken180weightloss.com. It worked for me. I feel confident it will also work for you.
French bread pizza?
Stouffer's.
It's almost the season for that. And as the seasons change, just keep in mind, comfort doesn't. Call the Waterworks and Hetter Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing for maintenance, installation, and repairs, or visit online at thewaterworks.com. The Waterworks and Hetter Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing, they are proud sponsors of Ohio State athletics. So if you've got the lie detector out for Matt Patricia, where else would you like to go? Because it doesn't feel like a normal training camp where you're asking an offensive coordinator, you're asking a defensive coordinator, hey, where's this position battle? And we did do that
because it doesn't matter. That's the question.
Yeah, well, I think that's what's interesting about this because it almost makes it's freeing in some ways to have that conversation, but you also know that Matt Patricia is not going to divulge scheme, and even if he did, that he would have 15 more in his back pocket that he would unveil the next week. Like, we did do that with Arthur Smith some on Wednesday with the offensive line, and there were questions about the running backs, situation and everything else, but you can't necessarily ask Matt Patricia, when do you want to have a decision about your starting defensive line, your linebackers, or your secondary, because he's dealing with a 19 to 20 person group.
Yeah, and I guess that's ultimately the question. Does it matter? Does it matter who is out there on week 1 against Ball State? Does it make is there any sense of normalcy that people will see from week to week as far as who the starting lineup is? I'm more curious about whether or not the guys we've spent a lot of time talking about over these last 6 months, the Jay Timmons, the Bo Atkinson, the rise of Devin Sanchez. Like, are we right? Like, is this stuff actually how you see it? Because we hear things through a lot of different people, right? Most of the time it's through position coaches who are interested in, like, pumping up the value of one of their players or pumping the brakes on one and say, hey, this. So when you start to hear other guys on the team, that's generally when we take it and be like, okay, well, Brandon Innes is talking about Jay Timmons, then that means that's real, right?
Yeah.
So are we right? Like, is Bo Atkinson that different from a year ago in Matt Patricia's eyes? Because he sees things in a way we will never see them.
Right.
So are we right? And obviously he's not going to come out and be like, yep, well, actually, no, this guy still stinks. Like, he's not going to do that.
I think that might be a little bit.
Well, I'm not talking about Bo Atkinson. I'm just saying. I know. I'm just saying in general, he's not going to come out and denigrate any player. Okay, right. He's not going to say, well, yeah, well, actually, he wasn't good a year ago. Like, he's going to say, well, he was still learning the system. He was working his way in. Like, are we right? Is it fair to elevate expectations for guys like that a year ago had high expectations? And that's a list that includes Bo Atkinson, includes Edric Houston, includes Peyton Pierce. Yeah. Like, have those guys taken the step that we've actually heard they've taken, or is it just fodder? And I think Matt is really unique in the way that he communicates. He's very, very honest, but he's also very thoughtful. And so it will take some tea leaves to be read, but I think we can find some of those answers. And some of that's going to be based on what we saw last week, which is, again, Quay Rasaw lining up behind Kenyatta Jackson, not opposite him, and Bo Atkinson out there.
Yeah, I think the actions, they speak pretty clearly and loudly through the first 3 days of camp. Now, there have been three more since then that we haven't been able to see, and that will likely be the case, I think, for the rest of August going into September 5th against Ball State. But, taking what we saw from those first 3 days and then listening to what Matt Patricia says, I think Bo Atkinson is the player that matters the most for. They could have, coming out of OTAs, lined up any way they wanted for those first 3 days. But what did they choose to do? They chose to put Bo Atkinson out there with Kenyatta Jackson. And by and large, not exclusively, but mostly, the rotation happened at defensive tackle. And when they took Bo Atkinson out, typically, the guy that we saw go in place of him was Christian Allegro to do a different configuration, different personnel, different body type. So, why is that? I think is the way forward, because if we're taking what Ohio State has done at face value through the first week of camp, how did Bo Atkinson change physically? What did this offseason do? What did the OTAs reveal about him that is different than a year ago? Because, this is another player who Matt Patricia doesn't have to teach the system to. Larry Johnson's coaching methods are not a mystery. There's a full year plus of that now for him. Even without the spring camp when that he missed in 2025, he has a year's worth plus a couple months of body of work. So Matt Patricia will have seen some sort of change, some sort of evolution, some sort of progress. And what is it? Because they could have put any of those other 5 options at defensive end out there to start on day one, and they didn't.
This is another thought I have about, I'd like to hear from Matt Patricia about, and it's a little perhaps out of left field, but like, how has Arthur Smith changed what Matt Patricia does at Ohio State, knowing that he's a guy who is going to challenge your defense in practice a little bit differently than perhaps was happening a year ago with a first-year quarterback. I'm interested to see if he's noticed a change in the offense. And Matt Patricia was an NFL offensive coordinator as well as a head coach and defensive coordinator. So, like, he sees a lot of these different things, and I'm sure...
I think he was a better defensive coordinator personally.
Probably, but he was an offensive coordinator at the same time that Arthur Smith was an offensive coordinator. So, like, you have some interesting things here that I think, just from a purely football nerd standpoint, I would love to be able to just pull out of him, like, what that's been like and how it's helped Ryan Day, how it's helped everybody, because you have just some very, very high level coaches. And Matt Patricia, despite the fact that he's this mad scientist and defensive coordinator, he pays attention to all, like, if you're out of practice, Matt Patricia's talking to the offensive linemen or the running backs just as much as he's talking to the linebackers or safeties. So he has it's weird because in some ways I think Ohio State has three head coaches right now. And like, they're both pretty comfortable moving around the entire team. And I'm interested to hear from his perspective, like, what has Art Smith's arrival done for his view of Ohio State football?
It's an interesting hierarchy because you have a head coach of the offense, you have a head coach of the defense, and you have
the head coach of the head coaches,
the CEO of Ohio State football. There's Ryan Day, you head coach of the head coach. Like, I've never seen it before. Yeah. This is new. They were,
unfortunately, these are not the questions that, like, we get a real great answer of probably in a scrum setting.
I think you'd probably have to. Let's just spitball it. I think you'd have to go about it a different way and say, like, Matt, what was your favorite battle with Arthur Smith at the NFL level? And do you feel any of that? Is the level of competition, can that translate to these practices? Because you're not trying to scheme up to beat the Ohio State offense or vice versa. You're trying to get ready for the season and win a national championship. But if you're scrimmaging,
you want to win,
and you want it to be a live scenario for both of these coaches, like then that should be becoming a chess match. Like,
what did Urban Meyer always say? If you're keeping score, we want to win. So they're keeping score in those scrimmages. They're keeping score in practices. Ohio State, the winner-loser periods are happening.
Loser.
Those happen every practice. So it's not something that I think is outside of the realm of a question that he could answer for us. It's just a matter of how in-depth he's willing to get. He's too smart to like go too deep.
Well, I think it'll be a lengthy answer, but I don't know if it will get to the bottom.
It's windy.
Yeah, which I love, because there, as you said, you're going to find the nuggets of truth in there. Yeah. You just have to know what you're looking for and listening for. And we will later on Thursday morning back at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Second media availability of this week. Ryan Day, again, will be on tap on Saturday after what we think is a scrimmage. Maybe I'll actually find out for sure if that's the case from Matt Patricia and company. We'll have.
It feels like a safe bet.
I don't feel unconfident. Yeah. It doesn't even seem like a bold P to me.
Is unconfident a word?
What's the opposite of confident?
Inconfident?
I don't know.
I don't know.
This isn't a word show, Birm.
I don't know. I'm not a.
It's a Three Thoughts Thursday. It's the beat presented
Webster,
by the Waterworks.
get at us.
No, don't. We don't want to hear from you. We do want to hear from America and maybe that one guy in France. Canada, if you've got any questions, feel free to send them to the Austin and Birm Show at gmail.com. That's the Austin and Birm Show at gmail.com, because tomorrow is Freaky Friday and it is time for that mailbag. So fire it up for us, and then we'll catch you later with some Snappy J's. He's Birm. I'm Austin. So long.